cr101radio.com, podcasts, and more. Welcome back to another episode of Preschool Pioneers. I am your host, Jeremy Walker. You can follow us on our parent network, CR101 Radio, on social media such as Facebook, Twitter, MeWe, Gab, and YouTube, and now on Liberty News Radio. You can subscribe to this podcast on your preferred platform so that you never miss an episode. Visit cr101radio.com/Preschool Pioneers for these links. So, let's get started on this episode entitled H is for Happiness. How to define happiness and how to create happy children. Welcome back, everybody, to Preschool Pioneers, and I am happy to be back to discussing another topic that's very important to children, Christian parents, Christian teachers, and we like to start every episode of Preschool Pioneers with answering the question, why Christians should become teachers. Well, Christians should become teachers because the world is full of horrible, terrible, destructive, humanistic advice for parents and teachers that is a spring from which all of the parenting advice and teacher training flows. This advice not only does not work, it produces the exact opposite from which it promises to produce. If children and families are truly going to be blessed and prosperous in this life, they must be taught the truth concerning children, the world, and where true happiness is to be found. So, to get started with this episode of Preschool Pioneers, I'd like to start with a simple verse which I think sums up everything that I kind of want to talk about concerning children and schools and happiness and all the rest. Part of Proverbs 12:10 states, "The tender mercies of the wicked are cruel." Now, this is a very important aspect to education. And if you didn't know, for those first-time listeners, maybe to Preschool Pioneers, my name is Reverend Jeremy Walker. I am married now over 20-plus years. I'm a parent of 11 children and have been involved in early Christian education now for over 20-plus years as well. That means that for me, I have seen a lot. And I've seen a lot of parents. I've seen a lot of families. I've been through a lot of educational stuff, if it's educational stuff that is state mandated and otherwise. And one of the things I can tell you is that one of the main problems is that things that are not true are touted as if they are 100% true. And those things that are true are, well, let's say, declared to be false, emphatically so. What is it that is emphatically declared to be false? Something that is bad advice? Well, most of it is anything that comes from the Bible. Plain and simple. Very easy stuff to understand. If you spend any time talking to people in the field of education, children, psychology, early childhood development, any of those types of things in between, you will find one thing. They are sincere people. Absolutely sincere. They really do believe that they are the truth holders. They really do believe that they are trying to put people on the right path. They really do believe that they are trying to guide people away from false understandings and false beliefs. Well, the problem just comes into when you're in these fields in education, if you're a teacher, if you want to be a teacher, if you're a parent, is trying to see where the people are coming from. I don't think anybody ever asked that question. Where is this person's advice coming from? Where does it flow from? Because if the well is poisoned, then anything that is drawn from that well is not going to bring life. It's just going to be destructive and harmful to you and your family. The vast majority of all educational advice is just that, tainted. See, happiness is a very interesting topic. Nobody wants to say, well, I want my child to be unhappy, or I want an unhappy life. Of course you don't want an unhappy life. Of course you don't want an unhappy child. But where is happiness? I mean, is it something that we can say, well, it's out there? Is it a flower? Is it found in the sky? What is happiness? What is it that makes humans happy? And of course, is that our goal? Is our goal to be happy? Is our goal to find happiness? Is our goal to be directing others to happiness? And what is that? One of the things I notice is that the vast majority of people are schizophrenic. Schizophrenia, if you did not know, is a person who holds to multiple beliefs all at the same time, where on one side they believe one thing, yet at the same time they act a different way. For Christians, we would say, well, if you say that you love your wife, then you are faithful to her. You can't at the same time state that you love your wife and yet be committing adultery. That is a schizophrenic approach to love, to your wife. Well, for me, I'm going to be doing a couple things, especially here with Preschool Pioneers. I want to start something a little bit different because we want to be giving advice and be talking to people about things, but I don't think people understand something, is that everything is theological. Everything is religious. Everything has a foundational, moral foundation from which everything else flows. And when we're talking about happy kids, we're talking about happy parents, you have to start from a premise, a point, and then have a place to go where you have an end goal. So we know where we start, we know we want to end up at, and the rest is the journey of how we want to get there. Happiness. How do we get from birth to what we call a happy place, whatever that might be? Well, I can tell you is that with a humanistic approach and view versus that of a Christian view, they don't have a place to start with because there is nothing. Everything is literally chaos, accident, and chance. So there is no meaning, there is no purpose, there's no creation, there's no point. So when a person with that viewpoint wants to teach you, wants to become an educator, wants to establish a school based on the concept that all of life came by accident. In fact, it is unexplainable. They can see the observable world, they can see what's in it, but they can't really tell you where it really came from. They can make up fairy tales about it, but they can't really tell you where it came from. These types of people can't even define happiness. They can't define good. They can't define evil. And apparently nowadays, you can't even define male and female. These people are so schizophrenically confused that they have nothing to teach at all. No parent, no teacher, no educational facility should ever start from the premise by which the vast majority of all educational quote-unquote experts begin from. It doesn't matter if it's in a government school. It doesn't matter if it's in a college. It doesn't matter if it is a early learning specialist or a psychologist. Every single one of those people start from a wrong premise, a premise of primitiveness, you could say. Our primitive brains, our reptile brains, our unevolved brains. But then, if you listen to the advice that they're giving about happiness and where you want to go, child rearing, education, then what do you get? You get them interjecting ideas into this concept, ideas that talk about spirituality, ideas that talk about, well, our purpose, ideas that say our responsibilities as parents. Well, how do you get these ideas, the concept of a spirituality? What does that even mean? Well, they, of course, don't know what they're talking about. They take advantage of the reader and maybe try to appeal to people who believe in a concept of a mankind having a spirit and a body. But these people don't have a basis. They can't even systematically explain what we are, where we came from, and surely we can't tell where we're going. Because as you mentioned in other podcasts for Preschool Pioneers, we're not going anywhere. We're going nowhere. But Christians, that's not what we teach at all. We have a definitive start. We have a definitive reason for the why the world is the way it is. We have a revealed direction for mankind, how it's supposed to act, where it's going into the future. And, of course, as Christians, we have the revelation of where we're going to end up. We have a full systematic approach to education and revelation and something to actually impart to children and to families. Actual advice. See, they lie constantly using big terms that you're supposed to bow to. We had a study. We looked at this. We took the advice. We had peer review. Lots of different ideas that's supposed to make you, the parent, the teacher, just stop and go, oh, they must know what they're talking about. These, more or less, are saying that they are the prophets of humanism. That's right, the seers of humanism, who are searching into the intents of mankind and saying, we know what is good for man. We know what it takes to create a happy, prosperous child. The problem is, and that's something I'm going to be introducing here on Preschool Pioneers, are the parenting type books that you might be absorbing. I found apparently that I absolutely am enthralled by parenting books. It's a strange thing. But I found out why it is. Why is it that I would be somewhat enthralled and can just absorb parenting books and parenting advice ad nauseum? I have no limit. I can just sit there and read a book and pore over it. Well, the reason is very simple. I have, as a pastor, I have a proclivity towards theology. And all parenting books, let me say this again, all parenting books are theological, are religious in nature. Their intention is to teach you about yourself as a parent. Their intention is to teach you about your child as a young person. Their intention is to teach you what the child needs, what you need, and, of course, what you need to grow, what's going to help you prosper, and even maybe potentially the direction you're going. Now, if you listen to the parenting books, they are 100% based on evolutionary standpoint. They talk about the reptile mind all the time. One thing that they will do, absolutely 100%, is they will talk about outdated information. All the parenting advice that you could get in the past is outdated, outmoded. The reason for that is very simple. With an evolutionary viewpoint, people in the past had they thought was the truth. But now we've evolved. We know more about mankind. Because how can you, 100 years ago, define modern man? Because modern man has evolved for 100 years. Our children are now the products of 100 more years of evolution. So the person 100 years ago, the parenting practices 100 years ago that might have worked, well, those practices no longer work on the modern man, the modern child. The needs of the person 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago were primitive man. with his primitive mind, his primitive intellect. We, of course, nowadays are so far superior. But that's where the problem comes in, is that is where their standpoint is. They don't have any advice that's not absolutely 100% applicable to mankind. Go back 6,000 years. For these people, the parenting advice is not applicable. 6,000 years ago, man was a different person, a different animal. Not even a person. Animal. This is where the problems come in. It says Christians, this is why we are so important. This is why we are needed. We say mankind hasn't changed a bit. He is the same person as he used to be at the beginning. He has the same problems. He has the same needs. He has the same things that will cause him to prosper. The world he lives in is the same type of world that it was 6,000 years ago. See, the problem with parenting and the problem with education, it cannot be understated. It cannot be understated. It is religious. Absolutely 100% religious. Now, I just happened to pick up because I was doing some research and I wanted some new content to talk about and discuss with this podcast about H is for happiness. What I did was pick up a parenting book because I ran into a person, and this was kind of a strange thing because I talked to a lot of people, and I ran into a person, and as we were talking, it came across as our conversation was developing, that they said, well, I get most, I'm a new parent, and I try to get most of my parenting advice from Google and TikTok. TikTok being the most modern, newest development of social media, which is probably the most brain drool type of thing you could get. However, lots of people love it. But apparently, some people love it for parenting advice. So they're literally going on to TikTok. They're listening to people create videos telling them how to be good parents. TikTok. Is there any surprise that our world is falling apart, that we have children who are running amok and parents who absolutely have no idea what they're supposed to do? They have no biblical foundations. They have no truth of any sort that they can look at and say, this is definitive. They're going to TikTok, people. Anyways, I picked up a parenting book because I wanted to get back into this idea and say, well, if these people are getting parenting advice from TikTok, well, the TikTokers who are making these videos, these people are listening to somebody as well. They're listening to, of course, the quote-unquote experts. So I picked up a book, and since the episode was called H is for Happiness, I decided to pick up a book called Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids. Well, who doesn't want happy kids? You want your children to be happy, don't you? Well, when I picked up the book for Happy Kids, I ran into some stuff, very interesting ideas and concepts. But the interesting part is just those things that were promoting the book. And now, once again, we're talking about Christianity, what's necessary, what's important, and what's needed. And Christians, we say, well, our parenting handbook is the Bible. And that sounds kind of cliche. I know it does. But it's also, at the same time, true. The sad part is people will not, one, read it, and two, they won't even teach it. And that's why the world needs Christian teachers and definitely Christian parents. So one of the things that was said about the book that I picked up to read to try to see what's being taught was that the current book can change your parenting life. But the author shares invaluable sets of insights that are new to the world of parenting. She will show you how to deliver your love and guidance in a truly nurturing way and how to avoid parental burnout in the process. So the book I picked up, well, it's new information. As I said, everything is evolutionary. This is new information to the world of parenting. Ooh. Well, it also goes into more as a reverend, a female reverend, which I want to get into that right now, but a female reverend who's also a parent educator and a consultant. So this is somebody you should really take the advice from. talks about how the author's compassion, wisdom, common sense, love, and understanding radiate in each carefully chosen word and example. And suggestion that is well written, easy to read. It's just a delicious book. From every chapter on effective managing anger, listen to your anger rather than act on it, to my favorite quote, your child is acting like a child because he is one. You'll know you found your parenting Bible. Unquote. Parenting Bible. So now we have a parenting book with a review in it, advocating the book. This parenting book is not just good advice. It's not just new to the world of parenting that you've never heard from before. It's new, secret knowledge. But this is something that is going to help you create a happy child. It's actually going to be your Bible. This is going to be your revealed knowledge, your new revealed knowledge from which you know you can trust and is absolutely 100% true. I like to say that this kind of stuff is new. I like to say that this kind of stuff here is what is not common, but it is. They all believe that the old advice from even the Bible is outmoded. It's outdated. It's old knowledge. The new knowledge is what we're supposed to go on. We have new evidence, new studies. Everything is new. No old. Out with the old. In with the new. This is something that as Christians and teachers and parents, you must watch out for. These are landmines. If you hear anybody telling you there's new information out there, new parenting advice, if you find it to be the new parenting Bible, run. Go the opposite direction. Don't stop. Don't pass go. Just go the opposite direction and absolutely run away. Parenting advice that is claiming to be new information that you absolutely have to have. It's going to help you be the miracle cure for your child. You just need to leave it alone. These people are humanist to the core. Humanist meaning they do not have any truth that is outside of themselves. Any revealed knowledge, as Christians would say, from the Bible, is old. It's outdated. It's untrustworthy. It's flat out wrong. And in a lot of ways, it is not only a mistake to follow it, it is abusive towards yourself, towards others, and to children. But for me, you just can't get away from it. And I want to share some of the things that I ran into. And there are loads of things that you should talk about. Loads of things in these types of books that are important to talk about. More importantly, to pay attention to. Things that are very important that you as the Christian teacher or parent need to focus on, need to be aware of, and things, of course, that are going to impact your life. Okay, and we're back here with Preschool Pioneers, continuing our discussion on parenting and the advice they give. So, one of the things I want to touch on about this subject matter is that, for some reason, being a peaceful parent and a happy kid is you need modern advice to find it, to do it, all the stuff that's required. Because these types of books promise something to you as a parent and as a teacher. And for some people, a parent is very alluring because they want happy children. Who doesn't want to make their child happy? And so these types of books say they will help you get inside the secrets of successful parenting, the secrets of successful parenting. Well, most parenting handbooks will tell you that to have a happy child, it means that they have no discipline, no control, let the child do whatever they want, never tell them no, and now you're going to create a happy child. Now, see, what is the problem with that? Well, they start with the wrong idea of what a child is. See, they don't see them from a biblical point of view. They don't have a proper knowledge of what the child is or what they need or what they should become in the future. Now, they all talk about wanting to become, happy kids, this kind of an idea. Like, part of the stuff that I was learning here talks about, if you want to work with parents, they want to help raise happy, emotionally healthy, self-disciplined kids. But all those are religiously charged concepts. First of all, what makes them happy? Some people, stealing makes them happy. It doesn't have to be hard to look at the political sphere, and stealing from people makes them happy. Some people, it's the right to control, as they say, their bodies. So murdering children and crushing them in the womb, well, that makes them happy. I mean, is that our goal? Just whatever a person wants, whatever they say, makes them happy? No, that's our goal. Emotionally healthy. This is a very big charge here because we're going through right now people stating that they're not male and female. And, of course, if you try to say that a person is male and female, then you damage them emotionally. It's their emotional health that's damaged. Emotional health, of course, is what they call a crisis in America today because, of course, you have school shootings and all the stuff that's been happening in our country. And we have an emotional health crisis in America today. Well, what is emotionally healthy? Is it emotionally healthy to look at the world and say, that's not the way it is? Is it emotionally healthy to say that I get to be whatever I want to be, and if you don't agree with me, well, then you are harming me, because if you don't say that I'm a girl when I say I'm a girl, well, I might hurt myself, and therefore you're hurting my emotional state and making me unhealthy. Well, I would say if a person says that if you don't agree with them based on what they say they think they are, that they're going to harm themselves, this is a person who clearly is not emotionally healthy and has nothing to do with the fact of what they call themselves, because if somebody disagrees with them, they're basically stating they're going to harm themselves. There's a level here of just emotionally disturbed people. And the better question is to look into that. The answer is not for everybody to stand around and say, well, let's all act like this is okay. If a person is going to harm themselves because they disagree with you, then there's a major problem here. This is not emotionally healthy at all. So I would agree. America does have an emotional health issue, but it's not where people think it is. Self-disciplined kids. Is that what we're creating? Is humanism, with all of its doctrines, and like I said, as Preschool Pioneers goes, I wanted to kind of touch more on parenting books and parenting advice and stuff like that. But are we creating self-disciplined kids? The answer is no. If you look at what's actually going on in the world, we did not have an epidemic of preschool children being removed from schools because they were so uncontrollable. They were a danger to themselves and others. Could not follow any advice. They could not follow any direction. They couldn't follow any orders. They cannot do anything. These are not self-disciplined children. We now have 20 years plus of people following these parental, humanistic health guides and help books and advice, telling them that this is new knowledge. We know how the child, or what the child needs. We know what the child is now. All that old advice, ignore all that. Just listen to us. We are the good people. We know how to make your child happy. We know how to make you happy. No, it's bunk. It's not true. See, they tell you that most parents haven't been given the information that they need. You're just ignorant. You just need the new information. If you want to be a good parent and be able to give good advice, then you need this new good information. See, if you have this information, you can then help your child grow into a wonderful human being. In fact, parents hear a lot of counterproductive, even destructive advice that ends up making parenting a struggle. So if you follow the modern advice, you're getting new information. You are going to help your child grow into a wonderful human being. What parent doesn't want that? What parent wants to listen to something like this and go, well, I don't want my child to be a wonderful human being. I want them to be a terrible human being. They don't say that. See, they are manipulative in their language. Christians, we teach the truth. We take the Bible, we sit it down, we say what a parent needs. We tell them where the direction's at, where the advice is at. These people have no God. They have no revelation. They have no revelation about who mankind is, where he came from, his future, his past, all the stuff that is important to us. But they claim through studies, new studies, we now know more about man. He used to have a primitive reptile mind, but now he doesn't. He's evolved. See, when they say that you listen to counterproductive and even destructive advice, that's talking pretty much about any advice besides what's coming out of their mouths. Anything. And this could be any older humanistic advice. See, not only are the humanists at war with themselves, with the other humanists, humanists can't help but constantly be at war. There is no peace. There is no happiness. Everything is a new revelation that comes from them. See, they break with their past. They break with any advice that came from the past. They hate their past. Christians teach something quite opposite. We have revelation because it goes well beyond ourselves. It stretches all the way back to the beginning of mankind, where he came from, what his problem is, what he does, what makes him tick, and, of course, what he needs to actually prosper, grow, and be happy in this world. God's commandments are stressed throughout the Bible. The redemption that man needs is stressed throughout the Bible. Man's fallen nature is stressed throughout the Bible. These are not complicated concepts, but they are rejected by every humanistic parenting book and government class you will ever take in your entire life. They don't believe these things. They believe biblical advice and even older humanistic advice that was maybe more influenced by Christianity, perhaps, not further enough away from Christianity, is counterproductive and destructive. So I have no problem saying the exact same thing. I have come to the understanding that I'm going to adopt a lot of their languages. So when they say that older advice, that old advice was counterproductive, well, I'm going to say every bit of humanistic advice is counterproductive. Whenever they say that the old advice is destructive, I'm going to say humanistic advice is destructive of man and children. And if you want to be a good parent, you will not follow this advice. You will follow the advice of revelation that was given to you, which we know to be true. All you have to do is look at history. As history moved on, those cultures that were more Christian influenced, and America at its inception was much more Christian influenced than most nations on earth, and still is to a large degree. But the further we go away from that, the more destructive mankind becomes, the less happy we become. We're not a happy nation. We're an antagonistic, angry nation. Do you think that these people who actually believe all the teachings that humanism gives them, these would be what people call, quote-unquote, the liberals, do they seem like they're happy people? Listen to them. Watch their videos. Watch them on the news. Watch their TikTok videos. They are angry, they are hateful, they are spiteful, and they want to see the world burn. Not only do they want to burn down everybody around them, but they will destroy themselves to the extent that if you don't agree that they are what they say they are, well, they're going to go kill themselves. That is not a person who is healthy, emotionally, physically, and especially religiously. This is counterproductive to what that person needs. It is destructive of what that person needs. See, Christianity has the answer. God's word, his commandments, has the answers that the world is saying, we don't know where they're at. Yes, we do. We know where it's at. See, the parenting books constantly and continually want to make you feel like you're stupid, mostly because they want to be, well, the prophets of the modern age. And they will constantly do that. One of those types of things is, of course, you're never supposed to force a child to do anything. And in one of the parenting books, it said spanking may make you feel better temporarily because it discharges your rage. So they immediately say anybody who tries to corporally discipline their child is discharging their own rage. This is not for the benefit of the child, never could be. You're angry, and therefore you're just taking it out on the child. This is what their viewpoint is on older parenting styles. Continuing, it says, but it does lasting harm to your child and ultimately sabotages the positive things that you do as a parent. So if a parent ever does any, what used to be called corporal discipline, it will sabotage anything about their positive relationship with their child. Because spanking and even slapping, as they say, has a way of escalating into harmful and sometimes even deadly violence. They want you to believe, from these parenting advice, that all people in the past who, if you've read any books in the past, it doesn't matter what those books are, including Tom Sawyer and all the rest in between, where corporal discipline in America was a norm. They're basically saying that these people hate children, are rage monkeys who are harming children, trying to beat them because they're just horrible people. They're going to destroy their relationships with them, and eventually these people are going to murder children. Now, I remember being in a government class where they talked about this type of concept, and the analogy they gave was that a parent had taken their child, flipped a bed mattress up the spring box, and kind of like tied their child to the spring box, and was stabbing them with scissors. And this was, of course, their analogy to what happens to parents who try to corporally discipline children, is that they turn into these rage maniacs and have deadly violence towards children. So they murder them. If any of this was true, because it's not, if any of it was true, then that would mean that nobody would exist right now who is over the age of 30. This is ridiculous, absolutely insane, and it's used to create an idea in your mind that everything that happened in the past was evil, terrible. No one could ever discipline for your good or for your benefit. It never happened. They're trying to bridge a gap between you and all your parents and your grandparents and everybody else that ever existed before you, when generally in America, corporal discipline was a normal concept that happened. It didn't matter. In fact, in the public schools, when I was a child, and I'm only 41 now, when I was a child in public schools, if you got in trouble at the school, you would go to the principal. And I remember my principal in particular at second grade comes to mind. He was an older gent. He had tattoos on his forearm, had been in the military. And when you went to go see him, you would get paddled. He had a paddle hanging on his wall, and you would get paddled in the school, public school system for, breaking the rules, being bad, whatever you want to call it. But you would get that. Now, you know how many times that I had to go to the principal's office in my public school career? Once. That's it. As a child, one time I went and never went again. And that was it. Now, are we to assume then from these parenting advices that the teachers and the principals there were these rage animals who were eventually going to start murdering children because they would eventually erupt into deadly violence? They were going to tie them to beds and stab them with scissors. Well, no, that's not what happened. It did not take place. That did not happen and never has happened. When I was growing up, in particular as a child, I do remember that corporal discipline was normal across every family that I remember. And guess what? There was nobody killing their kids. This stuff is not true. Now, it's not to say that there weren't actual murderers out there. Obviously, if anybody, strapped their child to a bed and stabbed them with scissors, they're not trying to discipline their child. They're not trying to corporally punish their child for some infraction that happened. They're trying to murder their child. Obviously, this is not the same thing. But see, these modern humanists try to draw the lines to try to disconnect you from the past. Try to make you see the past from a different light, and then try to spin it to make you think that it's something that it's not. Well, this will work if these people continue to think that this happens. Now, we had locally, we're here in Southwest Florida, we had our local sheriff talking about how they're going to protect, of course, the children in the local public school systems because of the school shootings that happened in Texas recently. And they were talking about what he was going to do to help our local area. And one of the things he talked about was he wasn't against, of course, guns. He wasn't against the Second Amendment. He wasn't against people owning them and operating them at all. 2, he put a big focus on the fact of parenting, because people were looking to the government and the police to stop these people from doing this type of thing. He was saying, hold on a minute. The problem starts with parenting. And he was an older gent. And the older gent said, well, the parents are scared to do anything with their children. They're scared that either the kids will be taken from them or they're afraid they'll be accused of child abuse of any sorts, because of the modern idea about these modern rage monkeys. Because if they do anything, raise their voice even, because the parenting books not only condemn, of course, corporal discipline, as we did when we were younger, you got in trouble, but also they condemn any form of raising your voice, any time out. Time out is a bad thing now. And if you do any discipline at all, you are going to destroy your child. So it goes farther down the road. So people are on the one side say, well, I could see where physical discipline shouldn't be used. First of all, you have to understand, especially when I was growing up, corporal discipline was kind of like the death penalty for the state. It was something that was never used. Very, very sparingly used. There's so many other things that you got in trouble for. You lost privileges and all kinds of other stuff that happened to you. But it wasn't something that happened all the time. And your parents didn't do it because they hated your guts. My parents didn't hate me, and your parents didn't hate you. Now, there are a few out there who actually do hate their kids. There's no denying that child abuse actually does take place. But to say that everybody who corporally disciplined their child 30 years ago all hated their kids, they all sabotaged their relationship with their children. I don't hate my parents. All the people that I know don't hate their parents. Now, there are some who do hate their parents, but those people are so rebellious, they hate their parents because they just hate their parents. They would have loved just being allowed to do whatever they wanted. It has to do more with them than it does the parent. These parents were not murdering their kids. It did not take place. But this is what they try to say. But the sheriff, as I said, was talking about parents need to go back to the concept of corporal discipline. He was advocating that. That's what the sheriff in Southwest Florida was advocating for parenting. Why? Because you're having 18-year-old kids picking up guns and shooting little kids in public schools. That's why. That's why the problem comes in. Why do you have a sheriff going, well, what's the problem here? It's his rearing. It's his raising. If I remember right, the mother of the child who went and murdered all these kids was like, well, he wasn't really that bad of a kid. You have to understand, it really wasn't his fault. Yes, it was his fault. And yes, it's probably, I don't know, a large degree to the parenting or the lack thereof. See, parenting advice in books today wants you to stop being a parent, and that's not okay. See, they want you to think that you are the problem because you can't control yourself. Anytime you get upset, you're at fault. If you raise your voice at your child, if you do time out, especially like when our parents used to give us corporal discipline, they should have apologized to us. Apologized. Because hitting is never okay. Well, there's a giant difference, and this is why the schizophrenia comes in. When these people can't see the difference between a child going and punching little Billy in the nose and a teacher or a parent, especially back when I was growing up, who was going to corporally discipline children for behavior. It was a consequence of behavior. It was not something that was done for fun. It wasn't something done because they just wanted to do it. These were done because there was a consequence for your action. When you remove, and these parenting books all want it, especially the one I'm just finished reading, wants you to remove all punishments of any sorts from children. So from the time that they are young to basically young adulthood, they should never be punished. They should never have a consequence for their actions that is negative. They should only feel unconditional love. Well, this is crazy. This is absolutely psychotic. But this is what the type of advice you're going to run into in these types of books. that you are supposed to just, for some reason, give everything to them. We ask ourselves, why is it that Christians should become teachers? Well, this right here is one of the major aspects about why they should. So I had a lot of other content that I wanted to discuss on this episode. H is for happiness. But I kind of got lost, as you can tell, on some of the content here, and I'm actually glad I kind of fleshed out some of these things, especially helping us understand the question, why Christians should become teachers. It's because the world needs and flat out deserves the truth. Parents need and deserve the truth. Teachers, your job is to teach your students what is the real world. And all these things are theological. All these things are religious. And I just can't state it enough, just how important it is that you understand this. Christians, you need to get involved. You can't sit back. Everything is inundated. It's movies, it's TV, it's music, it's books. The people on the other side, the humanists, they are dedicated, far more dedicated than you. Just acknowledge that that's the truth. Just acknowledge the fact that you're not as dedicated as you should be, potentially as you would like to be. Because especially as parents, I'm a parent myself, I want my children to understand what is the truth, what's real in the real world. I want them to know how to grow and how to be happy. And in Ecclesiastes in particular, it asks what is the whole duty of man. And the whole duty of man is to fear God and to keep his commandments. Why? Well, simple. Because a judgment is coming. The future is coming. And there is a judgment. If we see ourselves as we are, we can then go towards a solution to our problem. And our problem is sin. Sin is not out in the world. This is why it's not a political solution. Political activism is nice and all, but that is not the answer. Political activism will not solve the world's problems. It's a byproduct at best of regeneration and man fessing up that he does not, basically, he does not meet the criterion that he should. Obedience to God. He is God's creation. So, as I said, I went a bit longer on some of the content here than I expected. I had more that I wanted to get in touch with. But there will be a new part of Preschool Pioneers that I'm glad that I'm going to be able to do. And that is, quote unquote, don't try this at home. I remember as a kid, we were always told that, don't try this at home. And the parenting advice from humanists is exactly that. This is something you should not try at home. You should not try in the school. You should not try this anywhere because it will fail. So anyways, I want to encourage all people to get involved, especially parents. Do your job. Christians, get yourself involved as well. We want to help get you equipped and get you involved. So anyways, thank you for tuning in. This is Jeremy Walker for Preschool Pioneers. God bless.